Evening, folks.
Evening, David.
How are you doing?
Fine.
Excellent. Good stuff.
Evening.
Well,
Not being able to do any imaging this last week.
no, same here.
I'm just reprocessing some of my other images, that's all.
How are you?
Yeah. Get the last bit of information out of anything that I've got.
Yeah, that's the way. Excellent. Good.
Evening, David.
Hello, you right?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you, mate.
Good.
Evening, Sandy. Roger.
It's been a busy old week.
Hi, Colin.
Quite eventful, lots going on, so it's good. It's good. There's me thinking I was going to be really quiet in the lockdown, but that's not happening.
Evening to you.
Hello, Paul. You right?
Yes,
you made
thank
it this
you.
time. You remembered.
Yes. You're on the big screen as well.
Oh dear.
Yes.
That's worse than that.
She's going to cut my hair tomorrow as well. I should have had to get her to do it today. So leave it another minute or so before more people to come in. Everybody got
a good turnout tonight?
To tell us all? No?
Too cloudy.
Yeah. I haven't managed to get on Venus since Friday. Hi, Nick.
Good evening.
How are you doing?
I'm very well. Yeah, very well. Back connected.
Oh, good. I've repaired it properly.
They have repaired it. Yeah.
Excellent. Good. Just a couple more coming in.
No.
Yeah, excellent. Good. Okay, right. Welcome to Tuesday's Virtual Astronomy Club. Another good turnout again. So, yeah, it's working really well, I think. It's good. Okay, so I'll go through what I've got to say first before I introduce the speaker, Robin. He's going to talk to us tonight. So I thought I'd give you an update, as I usually do, on what I've got planned for the coming weeks. And you'll see I've been busy. I've been busy trying to get some speakers for us. So we agreed that this Thursday we're going to do some star clusters. And I'll talk about, well, I was going to talk about the opposition of Mars, but I'll talk about the lots of other things to look out for as well. Next Tuesday, got Joanna Jarvis, who's going to talk about astronomy in a volcanic landscape. And then I thought we might talk about occultations the Thursday after, unless anybody else has got any other suggestions, because the morning after we got an occultation of Venus by the moon. So I'll tell you all about the details of that as well. And then 23rd, we've got Mike Poxton. Thanks, Sean, for that one. Who's going to talk about variable stars. And then the Tuesday after that, I haven't put the Thursday in, but we'll do something, but I haven't organised it. I haven't got room for it on the screen. Mark Gibbons is going to talk about fast radio bursts, so that should be quite interesting. And then Martin Lewis, I know he was on the SPA webcast the other week, wasn't he, Robin?
Yep, he was great.
He does some absolutely fantastic planetary imaging. He's going to talk about his Venus night side infrared imaging, where he's actually imaging the surface of Mars through the clouds. And then going into July, which is the earliest I could get him, we've got Chris Lintott coming in to talk about the Zooniverse. So that should be really good. So you can't say I can't spoil you for speakers, can you?
Very well done, Dave.
Okay.
Excellent.
Julie, do you want to push Mike's event again? Because I don't think I put that on the slide because I didn't have room for it on the 17th of June.
17th of June, is it? Oh, is that next week? Gosh.
It might be.
It's coming up. Yeah. So Yeah. Oh, I've got it written down wrong. I'm talking about something else other than what I've written down. So I think I'm talking about the far side of the moon.
That's it. Is it just aliens, wasn't it?
Is it just aliens? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So that's
yes.
on Wednesday, the 17th of June. So
Right.
that's a Go Stargazing. Go Space
Go
Watch
Space Watch.
event,
Love
and you can reserve a ticket on Ticket Line. Is it Ticket Line they call it?
Eventbrite, I think.
Eventbrite. That's it. Yeah, I knew it was something like that.
They're all
Okay.
free.
So there you go. We've got quite a number of speakers. Don't forget that from July, we're going to go down to a Tuesday only, because I know the way things are going at the moment, I definitely am not going to have time to put in like I have been during the lockdown, the way things are going at the moment. Lots of exciting things going on, so it's all good. But, if we've got any ad hoc live streaming stuff, I might try that for the Venus occultation. That could be quite good fun to do, so I'll let you know more about that. And then maybe a Thursday thrown in now and again if I do get time. So just have a look on the website for all the details as we go forward. And I don't know if you noticed, but available for a very short time on YouTube. And where's the chat thing gone? Here it is. Is the film by NSC Creative, We Are Astronomers. That's available to watch for a very short time. I'm not sure how long it's on there for, but I'm just sending you the link in the chat so you can click on that and watch that when you got a minute before they take it off. It was the premiere the other night. I've only seen it as a full dome film, but they've put it on YouTube for people to watch and enjoy as well. Okay, and just a cheeky plug, because I can, 27th of June, if you want to get into Affinity Photo and know how to use for astrophotography image processing, I've got a workshop organised on that Saturday between 10 and 12. So I'll give you a rundown and using some of my images, or even your own if you've got them, show you how to use all the tools to get the best out of your images. And then that brings us to tonight. So we've got Robin online and we've tested his connection. It seems all to be working really well. It's Robin Scagell from the Society for Popular Astronomy.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello, Robin.
And he's changed the title of his talk. So I'm going to mute everybody now, if you don't mind.
Right, Stars Ancient and Modern is what I'm calling it. It's not meant to be a hymn book, but it just seemed to be a more appropriate title because I did call it Ancient Stars, and I thought Stars Ancient and Modern would be more appropriate. So what I'm going to look at is the way that the sky changes over a period of time, if we go back in time or we go forward in time. And let me look, you can see the first slide there, hopefully. Yep, there we've got the familiar constellations. You can see Orion, you can see Canis Major there, and that is what we used to. Now the question is, what would people in the past have seen? Okay, let's put some constellation patterns on. We're very familiar with these, and incidentally, you can see, all right, can you see my cursor, by the way?
Yes, we can see that.
Yeah, there, you can see this Orion looking familiar to us with it's sort of more or less the right way up. It appears more or less vertical. This is how we're used to seeing it, but I'll show you that it's not always been the same way. And here we have the plough, and that's the familiar shape that we're used to seeing. Okay, lots Cassiopeia here, the W shape of Cassiopeia, and these are pretty well the same as they would have been seen by ancient peoples. And by that I mean going back, say, thousands of years, certainly to the historical period when, say, Stonehenge was being built or the pyramids were being built, and people would have looked up and seen the same stars. So nothing unusual there. But there are subtle changes, and that's what I'll be covering. As Cassiopeia, the familiar, the old queen. There's the W shape of Cassiopeia, and there's one obvious change on this picture. This was drawn in the probably the 17th century. It's the Bevis Atlas, And there is the one change in the sky which occurred, the Tycho supernova of 1572. And that was the first admitted change in the sky. But now we're talking about something that happened over a much longer period. What if we go back into prehistory with the people who built Stonehenge, which was something like 2,500, 3,000 BC. Now, currently, we're used to find the pole star using the plough, and everyone knows how to do that. And there is it up the top of the screen, the pole star. And you know, of course, that the Earth's the reason that that we have a pole star and it stays in the same place. So this is all pretty elementary stuff for you lot, I'm pretty sure. But as the Earth goes around the sun, its axis is always pointing in the same direction. And even there's June, more or less where we are now, pointing in that direction. And then in September, still the same direction. As it goes round the sun, its axis is always pointing in the same direction. And of course, we know that that is Polaris, that is in that direction. And as you know, it's a pretty random coincidence at the moment that Polaris is the pole star. And you also probably know that there is this thing called precession, which affects a lot of spinning bodies like the gyroscope. It's happening all the time, and you can see that I'm sure you've played with gyroscopes as kids, and you can see that the axis of that spins around. It doesn't mean to say it's about to fall over in the case of the Earth. In the case of the gyroscope, it falls over simply because the friction causes the spin to the gyroscope to slow down, and that's when the effect of precession that is not demonstrated because it's just losing its spin, and that's when it falls over. But in the case of the Earth, it's not going to stop spinning, we hope. So the precession just carries on for millions of years in the same way. And this is the pattern that the pole star makes around the sky. Now, there's the pole star at the moment up at the top there, so we can see these markings. This is the date for 2000, so we're just slightly past that. But over a period of 25,750 odd years, it describes a huge pattern in the sky, a huge circle in the sky. And so it's actually, within prehistory, it has moved over the position of the pole in the sky has moved over this angle here. And at one point, the nearest star would have been Kochab there, or possibly Mizar there, and between the two is this star Thuban, which is in Draco, and around the time of the building of the pyramids, that would actually have been the pole star. And there's a bit of confusion about this, which I'll come on to in a minute when we're talking about the pyramids. And going to the other end of the sequence in about 12,000 years, Vega will be the pole star, not as close as the current pole star. We're very accustomed to the pole star being there, but if you go back even 500 or so years, then the pole star wasn't quite there. If we're going back 500 years, it would have been some distance away from the pole, just a few degrees away from the pole, and the navigators would probably have had to allow that if they were using the pole star to navigate by. Some of the early Atlantic voyages were pretty dead straight east-west across the Atlantic, and they were obviously trying to keep the pole star at the same angle above the horizon, and that would have helped them navigate, and eventually they came across the New World. Polaris is closer to the pole in 2100. I won't see it there, but I guess a few people will, and that's when it will be more or less dead on the pole star. On the point where the pole is. So there it is, at the very close to the center of the lines of RA and DEC. Now, I mentioned the pyramid myth. Here's the Great Pyramid of Giza, and it's at latitude 30 north. Remember that, 30 north, built about 2570 BC. Now, there are lots of myths and legends about the pyramids, many of which are completely untrue, and I'll mention one of these now. And it's to do with the orientation of the passageways inside the pyramid. Now, here's a cutaway of the pyramid. Actually, it's not quite accurate because the guy who drew it has drawn it as a pretty well an equal-sided pyramid. But the crucial thing is this line here. This is north-south. The pyramids are aligned pretty exactly north-south. And this is not too difficult to achieve, because even if you don't have a pole star, you can see where the sun rises and sets and the stars rise and set. And if you mark the rising and setting line of a star on the horizon, let's face it, it's pretty easy to do that there, because you don't have very high hills, and it's very difficult to do it in the Lake District, say, but in Egypt it was not so difficult. And you will bisect that line, and you will get the east-west line, and bisect that, and you get north-south. So not that difficult to do. But the crucial thing is that this passageway here is at an angle of 26.5 degrees. Now, I mentioned that the latitude of Giza is actually 30 degrees north. And there is this story that this passageway aligns with the pole star. Well, clearly it doesn't, because with the pole, because it's 4 degrees or 3.5 degrees off. So where does this story come from? And equally, people say, oh, it aligns with the star Thuban, which, as I've said, is actually nowhere near the pole at the moment. And they say, but it was near the pole at the time, and maybe that's where it was. But that doesn't work either, because the pole is where it should be. And even if you go, when the Thuban was not exactly on the pole, it would have described a small circle around the pole, and it would have been some distance away from the pole when the pyramid was built. So this is a complete red herring, the fact that that is 26.5 degrees, and it doesn't point to the pole at all. So what does it show? Well, here we are. Here's Thuban again, and I think it's coming up. There it is. Now you can see it's pretty well around the time the pyramid was built. Around there, it actually might have been a few degrees away from the pole. So people said, well, actually, at one end of its at its bottom of its arc, it would have been on the pole. But what's the point of that? So, in fact, there's a much simpler explanation of why that passageway is at 26.5 degrees. Here it is. If you're building square blocks and you pile them like that, and you build a passageway for whatever, an entrance or whatever, the top of it, the angle is 26.5 degrees. Work it out with your calculator. The trigonometrical, the tan of 1/2 is 26.5, and it points nowhere in particular. So that's a simple explanation for that passageway and why it's aligning. It doesn't align with Thuban, it doesn't align with anything. And so I think a lot of these stories, as with some of the alignments that people have produced for stone circles, are just coincidence. But that's the effect of precession, moving the position of the pole star. There are other effects which I will show you now, and the constellations will actually move around the sky and be visible at slightly different times of year. And this is the thing you would most notice if you were to be able to go back to even just comparatively recent times, Roman times or whatever. You would notice that. Now, there's a slight problem in terms of the calendar having changed in 1582, but apart from that, midwinter would have been the time to look, and you would be seeing things looking noticeably different, even comparatively recent in historical times. Some constellations that we don't see now would be above the horizon from the UK, and I'll show you that. Now, one of the most noticeable things I mentioned, I showed you Orion earlier on, and this is how it would have appeared this year, and I've chosen the 12th of January 2020 and 2315 simply because you've got this sort of Betelgeuse is directly above. Is that star safe? I think it is. Yeah, that's right. It's star safe, and it's not directly above, but we're very accustomed to seeing Orion appearing quite symmetrically above the southern horizon like that in midwinter. But go back to 2020 BC, and no matter when you choose the position of Orion at when it's on the meridian, and here it's on the due south, it's actually at a slightly different angle, and you would notice that. It would be very obvious to you. And as you can see that different stars, as you go further back, different stars start to appear above the horizon because the angle of the because of this fact of precession. The whole stars are slipping around the pole star. Midwinter 3000 BC. Now look what's happened. Instead of Orion being on the meridian at 3000 BC, you've got the ecliptic still going past Regulus and through past Spica like that, but they are in different parts of the sky at that time of even in midwinter. And you also notice that some stars of Centaurus are becoming visible into our sky. So, okay, Centaurus. Well, that's pretty. You can't see that from this country. Or actually, you can see one or two of the stars of Centaurus, but not so you would notice because they're right down on the southern horizon. And you would actually have seen the Southern Cross over Stonehenge in 3000 BC, which is something that we just don't imagine. If you were looking due south over the stones of Stonehenge, it would have been visible on the southern horizon. So that's a real strange thing that we would not expect, and you would certainly notice that. I'm sure even a lot of non-astronomers would notice that the stars were different if they could see the Southern Cross. But there's an oddity here. Look at the distance between those two stars there. That is not what we expect. I'll come on to that in a minute. So look, this is what we see now with the Southern Cross here, and this was taken in Australia a couple of years ago, and Alpha and Beta Centauri. If I go back one, you'll notice that the separation was considerably different. So this is more than just the slippage of the precession of the equinoxes. This is an actual movement of the stars. This is when we come on to proper motions. Now, I've got a rather nice animation here. Now, I know that Dave is going to be talking about, you're going to be talking about Barnard Star as a project. And so this is one I got off the internet from a chap called Steve Quirk. And it is the star with the strongest proper motion. It's only 6 light years away, and it has the largest proper motion of any star. If you photograph it now, and I won't tempt fate by trying to show you a picture that I've taken because I meant to put it in the presentation, but I haven't done so. But you can notice that little V shape of stars there, and you can see that now. And Barnard Star has moved way up here somewhere, and that's little V shape is considered. This is incidentally with south at the top, and that little V shape is some way off the line of Barnard Star. I did actually photograph Barnard Star myself in 2018 and 2019. I haven't done it this year yet, but it's coming up to the time when it'll be easy to do. It's in Ophiuchus, and it's quite easy to photograph. It's in sort of mid-sky, so not at all difficult to find and photograph. And I was using a fairly small telescope, an 18mm, and even in 1 year, the difference in position was noticeable. If you flick from one year to the next and just align the two, you will see the movement just over a matter of a year. And it seems to me that this is a project which you would recommend a young person to start. He would get a very good range of an arc of positions of Barnard Star over a lifetime, he or she, I should say, and this is well worth attempting. Of course, over a matter of half a century, which might be the average working lifetime of an amateur astronomer, your techniques would change. If I had tried to do this at the age of 20, the equipment that I had would just not have been appropriate. A lot of you are similar age to me, maybe not quite as ancient, but you would know that in the 60s, 70s, 80s, astronomical equipment was not only a lot more expensive, it was really quite hard to get together, and photography was a different matter. These days it's a doddle with CCDs. It really is. As I'm sure you know, you can be out and getting a really decent picture of the sky in a matter of minutes, really. And back in the 80s and 90s, it meant tedious aligning of scopes, and none of this auto tracking, and CCDs have made life so much easier as well in getting a result very quickly. So I must say that it is an easier job to do now. What will it be like in another 20 or 30 years? We will still have all the same equipment, so you have to use the same telescope and probably the same camera for your photographs of Barnard Star over a matter of years. You'll keep them lovingly waiting for the next opportunity to photograph Barnard Star. At least that's the hope anyway. So that's Barnard Star. And proper motions, these are the actual motions of stars through the sky, and Barnard's is the closest, and it's certainly by far the most obvious, but it's a fairly faint star. It's about 8th or 9th magnitude, I think. And so the bright stars are not that obvious when you are looking just over a matter of a year or two. Although many bright stars are quite close, and the most noticeable one, I think, if you were to compare the sky between now and a few years, 1,000 years ago, would be Altair, surprisingly enough. It's only 17 light years away. I know Alpha Centauri is only 4 light years away, but Altair is also an obvious star to look at. And I've got a pair of photographs here. You can see Aquila now, and be familiar with this pattern with Altair, more or less equidistant, or certainly on the straight line in between the stars on either side. I forget the name. That was called Tarazet. I can't remember the name of that one. But 3000 BC, it would have been some considerable distance away from that line, and you would certainly notice that. So the movements of the bright stars can be obvious, okay, not in a lifetime as in the case of Barnard Star, but our prehistoric ancestors would have seen something of a difference. And this brings me onto the Southern Cross again. And if we go back to prehistory, you can see that Alpha Centauri, which of course is the closest star, is actually moving very rapidly away from towards Southern Cross. So it won't be okay, it's not something you would notice in a lifetime, because Barnard Star is a much more rapid mover than Alpha Centauri. The proper motions of stars are nothing to do with where we are in the galaxy. They are milling around all the time. We are not all moving, all our stars are not all moving together in a lovely wheel-like motion around the galaxy. Stars have got their own individual orbits around the galaxy, and some move fast, some move slow. Alpha Centauri happens to be moving more in the same speed as the sun compared with the Barnard Star, but it's certainly got a proper motion of its own. So as we shall see in a minute, hopefully I'll demonstrate a bit of software to you. Cassiopeia also, over a long period of time, can distort, and I'm sure you've also seen pictures of Ursa Major, the plough distorting. So if we go back, okay, just a few thousand years, it looked the same. But if you go back to 50,000 BC, Cassiopeia would have looked like that. So there's a lot of fun to be had in trying to work out how the stars would have appeared in ancient times. Now this is where I come to. This is where I have got to stop sharing the screen and start sharing another one. This is a bit of software which will do this for you, and I can guarantee you that as soon as I finish this talk, you will be itching to get your hands on this bit of software, so I'll tell you where to find it. And there's the URL, and now I'm going to, so that is not the actual URL, that's one that I've done so it's easier to write down, tinyurl.com/past stars, and that's one I created so that you can find this. Now I'm going to stop sharing this screen, and I am going to share it again with this bit of software when I can find it. Google Chrome, that's the one I want to share. Right, can you see that now, Dave? Can't hear you.
Yes, we can. Yes.
Good. Right. Thank you. That's nice to know. It's working now. Now, this is the one for let me explain what happens. When you load this software, actually, confusingly, you see this, and you think, well, what am I supposed to do? Up in the top left of screen, you'll see that little arrow. Do you see it there? And you can click on that, and sometimes this play window is in the wrong place. So if you move that just there, then you can, let me probably maximize my screen. There we go. So you don't have my taskbar at the top. Now, this is the play screen, and this is the year, the next one down. The speed of simulation. Now, ship speed I'm not going to do, because you can actually use this software to fly through the galaxy, and some of the simulations that you can use will allow you to do that. And all the other controls will put star names on. You can switch those on and off, and put the boundaries on, and more names and asterisms. Lots of things you can do with this. The fun thing to do to start with is to let's try Alpha Centauri, because I mentioned that. Now, the date here is 2000 AD, and I've set this at the moment for 15 years per iteration, and I can speed it up as we go. So, and now I'm going to use this button on the top left, and notice it says forwards, and so that's the forward arrow there. So I click on play, and we'll see what happens. Now, you can see there, Alpha Centauri, or original Centaurus as it's called there, is moving quite rapidly towards Beta Centauri. And that's at the top left, the time, the date is 4700 AD, 5500 AD. And so in, let me just stop it for a second, 6290, the two stars will be really close together. The Southern Cross itself hasn't changed much, and most of the other stars haven't changed, but you can see how Alpha Centauri there is moving quite rapidly. Okay, not in a lifetime, but certainly over a period. Who knows what humans will be like in these times, but okay, 10,000 AD, if we go back to 10,000 BC, humans were very much the same as we are today. Okay, they didn't have the same facilities as we do, but they're the same people. And so modern humans, they're still described as modern humans, would have seen, had they been, had the facility to draw these things, they would have noticed Alpha Centauri in a quite different position from where it is now. If we go down to the bottom left where the controls are, we can look at Barnard Star. And let me reset the date to now. And here there are stars of Ophiuchus and Hercules up there. And there's Altair. So keep an eye on Altair as well. And so I've only got this at 15 years per iteration. I'm going to slow this one down because Barnard Star really is a real greyhound of the sky. So let's start playing and you'll see what happens. There goes Barnard Star, just that little 9th magnitude star there. That is moving quite quickly. So, okay, we're still 3,500 AD, so it's certainly nothing. You would not notice this sort of motion in a matter of our own lifetimes or anything like that. But it is a really rapid motion through the stars and through the constellations even. And that's just at 10 years per iteration. I've slowed it down, otherwise it's belted off the screen. Now look at Altair, see how that's moved as well. So in the 3000 BC, it was somewhere to this side of that line between Tarazed and Alshane. There we go. And now it's moving of its own accord, only 17 light years away, and so that's moving as well. Now, as I say, you can have real fun playing with this because there are lots of simulations that they do. You can go to any part of the sky, and it's best to choose the constellation. Unfortunately, you can't move around the sky using the cursor, but it is something you can certainly play with. If I well, there's Crux. We've had a look at that. Let's try Cassiopeia now, and that's how I simulated the position. Let's go back to now, and I'll change the simulation speed there because I'll get hold of that. Maybe 200 well, 300 or so years per iteration, and that's because stars of Cassiopeia are that much farther away. And let's play this and see everything move. You can see the stars are moving there quite quickly, and other stars. There goes Barnard Star whipping around the sky again, and you can see in well, okay, it's now 5000 AD, and this pattern of Cassiopeia has changed quite a lot. And I think I can put on somewhere here. We've got the constellations lines. Yes, there you go. You can see. Let's go back to sometime BC. It's a very sensitive control, this, as you can see. So you can have hours of fun going into well into prehistory and well into the future. So let's reset to epoch 2000 and see where we're doing now. Let's have a look at another part of the light. Let's have a look at Orion, because that's got, this part of the sky also shows us Sirius, I believe. Yes, there we go. So I've changed it to, we've now got 300 years per iteration, and let's run this. There goes Sirius, Procyon. You can see the stars racing around. Aldebaran even, which I think is about 280 light years away. You can see that moving quite rapidly. 4,000, 5,000, 50,000 AD, maybe Betelgeuse will have gone supernova by then, who knows. But that's one thing this software can't predict. But the basic pattern of Orion is still pretty well the same, as you can see, because the stars of Orion are something like 1,500 light years away, and we're only talking about the closest stars, such as Procyon, the bright stars, moving in anything like historical or prehistorical time scales. And reset to 2000. You can see the pattern of Orion hardly changed. So the dinosaurs would certainly have seen Orion had they been interested, as we see it today. And so would our ancestors who built Stonehenge and the pyramids and so on. But some of the other stars would have certainly moved very much more rapidly. And I think you'll have great fun, as I have, in playing around with this bit of software. So if I can just remind you of the URL, let me just go back to my presentation. Which one is it? There we go. Past stars. Can you see that? Past stars. And well, that's me finished. Thank you very much. I've got to share.
Thank you very much, Robin. Yeah, I was just going to pop that on the chat just so that people can. I think I've spelt that right. So let's go. Excellent.
Yeah, it's easy enough to remember.
Brilliant.
Past
Thanks
stars.
very much. Right. Any questions for Robin? I think we'll definitely have a go with that simulator, because that looks really, really good. Any questions?
They're all playing with the software now.
They probably are, yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me.
I'm intrigued about the pyramids, because one of the talks and one of the interests I have, having been involved with Bedford Astronomical Society and the pyramids, I've always been keen on Egyptology. But Piazzi Smythe, who was, brilliant astronomer, but sort of went down the wrong route in later life when he became a pyramidologist.
It's Norman Lockyer also was, of course, very keen on stone circles, and he would go around the country looking at stone circles, and he would see an alignment and say, "Ah, yes, the Pleiades," or something like that. But it was, you've got a stone circle consisting of maybe 50 stones, and you go from one side to the other. They're almost bound to line up with something, aren't they? So it's very easy. And you go back to that, was it Arnold Watkins, the old straight track, who people talked about ley lines, and he drew lines between church steeples, and some of them are lined up with astronomical objects, some of them had no connection at all. And there's a vast subculture of people who believe in ley lines and believe that there is something mysterious about them. No, I'm afraid not. I don't think there's any such alignments, but it has it is notoriously easy to draw alignments with the pyramids and stars and so on. I'm not saying that our ancestors weren't absolutely fascinated by the stars, and quite clearly they were, because there are definite astronomical alignments in the pyramids and the stone circles, but that's another talk for somebody else to give. So maybe there's I will really enjoy seeing a modern presentation about the alignments of the stars, because a lot of the alignments of the stone circles, because a lot of the work that was done even by Alexander Thom back in the 60s, where he reckoned that people could predict eclipses using stone circles, and they were vast megalithic computers. I think a lot of that now has been discounted, and but there's no denying that that some of the stone circles, or rather the long barrows like Newgrange in Ireland, were aligned with the solar sunrise, and we know that Stonehenge was aligned with the sun. But whether it was the midsummer sunrise or the midwinter sunset is another matter.
Someone's pointed out in the chat why we didn't have any questions, because I had the setting on so people couldn't unmute themselves. But you should be able to unmute yourselves now, folks.
Yeah, can I just make a little note about the dinosaurs being able to see Orion?
Yes, go ahead.
In fact, they wouldn't have been able to see Orion because all the main stars that make up Orion, apart from Betelgeuse, are very, very young. So they wouldn't actually have existed when the dinosaurs were around.
Oh, that's a good point. Yes, I'll grant you that. They would have been, I'm sure there would have been different stars there. I think I probably should have remembered my my astrophysics at that point. Yes, I'm sure there would have been different stars there, but they would not have seen the stars of Orion, the pattern as Orion, as you say, because they were 65 million years ago, and the software can't show the stars exploding and so on.
Obviously. No, it's a lovely piece of software.
Definitely be downloading and have a play with that.
You could. It runs online, incidentally. You don't have to download it. You can do, but it run online.
Equally, there may have been some extremely bright stars that we're not familiar with that have subsequently gone supernova, of course. So the Crab progenitor probably would have been a very bright star in the past.
Yep, absolutely. And as you run that software, some stars that you don't recognize do suddenly appear in the sky. And this is, I think it's based on Hipparcos data. It would be interesting to know if there's any plans to update it using Gaia data, which of course includes many more stars. I think that would be not something you could just run online, but you probably need quite a major bit of software and processing power to do it.
Yeah.
But using the Hipparcos catalog, that's how it works. But you'll be surprised to find how many stars that have got no particular brightness at all in our current skies suddenly appear, and you trace them back, and they just got a fairly meaningless designation. You're right, Nick. Thanks.
Robin, Chris here from Herefordshire Astronomy. When you were talking about the alignment of that tunnel in the Great Pyramid, and it would appear, and I agree with you, probably it doesn't point to anything particular. I thought you were going to go on to talk about the theory of the alignment of the pyramids themselves. How do you feel about the famous theory that the Nile represents the Milky Way, and the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Khufu Pyramid, etc., represents the Belt of Orion, Al-Nitak, Al-Nilam? And it is, I'm sure you know that the three pyramids are aligned in an extraordinary way, almost representing magnitudes as well by size, and they do bear a very strong resemblance to Orion's belt. Personally, I don't know what to make of it, but it's a fascinating theory. What do you think about that one?
Well, I think as with all the other things, it is probably just coincidence. And someone has pointed out actually that the three stars would actually be the wrong way up in terms of north and south if you try and align them to the belt of Orion. And I I believe it's just coincidence, and the Milky Way thing. This was Hancock and Beauval suggested all this sort of thing, and they also came up with a totally spurious date of the building of the pyramids of 10,000 BC, which doesn't align with anything else. So they made a lot of money out of their book, but I don't think we can take the. I don't believe their theories at all.
Okay. That's that one dead then.
Well, don't believe everything I say either.
No, I think I agree with you.
Anybody else? No? Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you, Robin.
I was showing those Starlinks. I wasn't showing the Starlinks. They were quite a remarkable sight, and I know we're all very worried about the Starlink satellites. I have to say that the recent launch, and it is going. They were going over the UK comparatively recently. The last launch, which was on only a week or so ago. But the shot I want to show was them going through the plough, and one of the.
Try that again. You want to try that again, Robin? See if we can get it working.
Okay, right. I'll stop sharing this, and let's see if I can find the Windows Media.
If you open the video first, or whatever it is first, and then share that once it's opened.
Yes, well, it is open at the moment, but.
The Zoom window's over the top of it by the looks of it.
Ah. Let me, I had this trouble the other day when trying to show Windows Media Player. So let me minimize, if I minimize the PowerPoint slideshow, maybe that's the problem. In fact, I'll close that since I don't need it now. There we go. And I'll close the browser window.
There we go.
Oh, you can see it, can you?
Well, no, we can still see the software.
Oh, here we go.
There we go. Yeah, we can see that now.
So the star in the center there is Doobie in the plough. And it's an extraordinary sight of them going through there. But you did need binoculars to see them.
Right.
This was just a few days ago.
So what sort of setup was that using, Robin?
That was with a 135mm lens and the Sony A7S camera at 80,000 ISO.
Right.
And that's a very powerful combination, I must say. Yeah. I absolutely love the Sony A7S camera because it can show you this sort of thing. And it will show stars, as you can see, down to about 8th or 9th magnitude. But this pattern of stars going through the plough, as and there's another satellite getting into the act as well.
Almost. Yeah.
So this is these are the 2 pointer stars of the plough, and the pole star is up that way, and they're obviously heading for the pole. Those satellites. So that was the Starlinks going through. I think it was on the 5th of June. And they were launched on the 2nd of June, as I recall.
Right, yeah.
I haven't looked to see if they are visible today, but tonight. They are a quite alarming sight when you see them like that.
They certainly are, yeah. They're certainly dramatic, that's for sure. Roger, did you...
Yes, just an update for the Starlink. Looking at Stellarium today, I see there's the Starlink coming over about 20 past 11 tonight.
Oh, that's way too late for me.
Oh, is it? All right.
One thing I did find is that the Stellarium on the desktop doesn't show them, but on the phone it does update the satellites. The trouble is that each one of them is labelled, and you get just a mass of labels crawling across the screen, so you can't see the individual satellites and where they're moving. You just get this whole mass of labels moving across the screen. So
I use Heavens Above for those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Pretty
sorry, I beg your pardon.
You can select which batch you want for it to show.
All right. Yeah, I beg your pardon. It was Heavens Above I was using. So I had to give up using the app because to see where they were. It just told me when they were coming across, but you need to look. You need to use the desktop version to actually see where they're going to be.
Yeah, yeah. Certainly recommend Heavens Above for that. Brilliant. Okay, well, any more questions from anybody? No, you can definitely unmute yourself, so it must be out of questions. Okay, thanks so much, Robin, for giving the time.
Thanks, everybody.
Talk
nice
tonight.
to see you all.
Really interesting to see how the sky's changed over the past, and nice little tool for us to explore that for ourselves.
Yeah, have fun with it.
Perhaps do some nice little educational videos as well on the back of that. Great.
Thank you very much, Robin.
Thank you, Robin.
Okay.
On Thursday, we're going to be talking about star clusters. So if you've got any pictures, we've already had somebody volunteer some star cluster pictures, which is fantastic. And I'm going to talk about the Mars opposition as well. And I set you a few challenges. Robin already mentioned one of them. So I'll set you a couple of challenges as well. Okay? So I'll see you on
just say
Thursday.
one thing about Jupiter and Saturn, which we can see down in the southern sky.
Yep.
December the 21st, and I haven't seen this mentioned anywhere else. December the 21st this year, Jupiter and Saturn will be closer together in the sky than they have been for the last 400 years.
Yeah.
And they will be easily visible within the same field of view of your telescope. They're only six minutes of arc across, and the average field of view is maybe a degree at low power, and so you can see the disks of the two planets together. They haven't been seen as close together since the time of Galileo, and won't be seen again like that close for another 400 years. So let's hope it's clear on the 21st of December, and keep an eye on them as they get closer.
Yeah, and we should be able to get those. If you've got a nice wide field scope, you might be able to get them in the same field of view.
You won't even need a wide field scope. 6
No, that's
minutes of
true.
arc
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
you know, high power almost.
Yeah. Well, I do have a slide of it because I was talking about lots of things on Sunday for Stargazers Lounge. So I'll make sure I put that in for Thursday as well, so I can show you exactly what it looks like. Okay? Okay, well, thanks so much for everybody coming in. Thanks, Robin, for your time. And keep safe, keep well, and keep looking up. Okay?
Thank you.
Right.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, Sandy.
Bye.